They mocked Keanu Reeves and even his dog. They underestimated him. But Keanu didn't just get even. He walked into the biggest boardroom, stared the untouchable CEO in the eye, and fired him right then and there. The move left the entire corporate world stunned. Here's the jaw-dropping story of how Keanu and his dog changed the game. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching us from. We'll keep going. The pristine halls of Sterling Enterprises gleamed under the fluorescent lights as Keanu methodically pushed his cleaning cart through the 47th floor. His weathered hands gripped the handle with practiced ease, while Sam, his loyal German shepherd, padded silently beside him. The morning sun had barely begun to peek through Dallas's impressive skyline, casting long shadows across the empty offices. Through the corner of his eye, he noticed Sarah, a young single mother from accounting, already at her desk. Dark circles under her eyes betrayed another sleepless night, likely spent worrying about her mounting bills and her daughter's medical expenses. She offered him a warm smile, one of the few genuine ones he received in this tower of glass and steel. "Morning, Mr. K," she whispered, careful not to disturb the oppressive silence that ruled the early hours. "Would you like me to look after Sam today? I brought some of those treats he loves." Keanu nodded gratefully, his eyes crinkling with warmth. Sam's tail wagged in anticipation, already moving toward Sarah's desk. These small moments of kindness were rare in Sterling Enterprises, where empathy was often viewed as a weakness to be eliminated. The elevator dinged, and Keanu quickly resumed his work, becoming invisible just as Robert Sterling III, the CEO, stormed out with his usual entourage of yes-men. Sterling's expensive Italian shoes clicked against the marble floor, his voice carrying through the space like a whip. "I want those layoffs finalized by end of day," Sterling barked into his phone. "I don't care about their circumstances. The shareholders want higher profits, and I'm not letting some sob stories about families and mortgages stand in the way of our Q4 targets." Keanu kept his head down, but his keen ears caught every word. His calloused fingers tightened almost imperceptibly around the mop handle as he continued his methodical cleaning routine. The other employees scurried to their cubicles, avoiding Sterling's gaze like prey hiding from a predator. In his pocket, a small notebook pressed against his thigh. Another day, another entry in his growing collection of evidence. For 5 years he had watched, listened, and documented. The weight of his secret identity as the company's largest shareholder felt heavier with each passing day, but the time wasn't right. Not yet. The morning progressed with its usual rhythm of meetings, coffee runs, and hushed conversations. Keanu moved through it all like a ghost, collecting tiny pieces of a puzzle that only he could see. He observed as marketing executives discussed manipulating product safety data, as HR representatives planned to deny valid worker compensation claims, as finance managers gleefully calculated how much money they could save by cutting employee benefits. During his lunch break, hidden in the maintenance room he had claimed as his sanctuary, Keanu pulled out a worn photograph. It showed 2 young men standing in front of a much smaller Sterling Enterprises building, himself and Thomas Sterling, the company's visionary founder and his best friend. Thomas's words echoed in his memory. "This company was built to help people, Keanu. Promise me you'll never let them forget that." A commotion from the executive floor drew his attention. Through the ventilation system, he could hear raised voices from the boardroom. Sterling was berating someone again, his words dripping with contempt. "I don't care if she's been here for 20 years. Either she takes the pay cut or she's out, and make sure to find something to pin on her. We don't want her eligible for unemployment benefits." Keanu's jaw clenched as he recognized they were talking about Eleanor from HR, one of the few remaining employees who remembered the company's original values. Sam, who had returned from his time with Sarah, nudged his hand softly, sensing his distress. As the day wound down, Keanu made his way to the executive floor for his final cleaning rounds. The offices were empty save for Sterling, who was still in his corner office, probably plotting tomorrow's cruelties. Through the glass walls, Keanu could see him speaking animatedly on the phone, gesturing with expensive fountain pen in hand. What Sterling didn't notice was Sam quietly pushing open the door to the adjacent file room, a trick Keanu had spent months teaching him. As Keanu pretended to mop the hallway, his faithful companion's keen nose led him to a recently accessed cabinet. Tomorrow, after everyone had left, Keanu would return to investigate whatever had captured Sam's interest. The sun had set over Dallas by the time Keanu finally wheeled his cart back to the maintenance room. As he hung up his uniform, his fingers brushed against the silver key hidden in its pocket, the key to Thomas's private office, untouched since his departure. Soon, very soon, he would need to use it. In the parking garage, as he helped Sam into his modest pickup truck, Keanu caught his reflection in the window. The humble janitor's clothes couldn't quite hide the sharp intelligence in his eyes, or the determined set of his jaw. Thomas had chosen him for a reason, and with each passing day the weight of that choice pressed harder on his conscience. As they drove home through the glittering Dallas night, Sam's head resting on his lap, Keanu made a decision. He had been patient, gathering evidence, building his case piece by piece, but watching Sarah's struggles, Eleanor's impending humiliation, and countless others suffering under Sterling's reign of corporate terror, it was becoming unbearable. The time for waiting was coming to an end. Little did Sterling know, the quiet janitor he passed without a second glance every day was about to become his worst nightmare. The revolution would begin not with a bang, but with the silent determination of a man who had nothing to lose and everything to prove. The following week brought a shift in the air at Sterling Enterprises. Like the calm before a storm, an uneasy tension permeated the building's 50 floors. Keanu noticed it as he made his morning rounds, Sam faithfully at his side. The whispers were harder to ignore now, carrying words like downsizing and restructuring, corporate euphemisms that always preceded pain. Sarah caught his eye as he passed her desk, her face pale with worry. "Mr. K," she called softly, "have you heard? They're planning something big. HR has been in meetings all week and they've ordered boxes, lots of boxes." Keanu paused, allowing concern to show on his usually stoic face. He knew what was coming. He had seen the documents in Sterling's office the night before, after Sam's discovery. The strategic workforce optimization plan was anything but strategic or optimizing. It was a massacre of livelihoods, carefully planned to maximize shareholder value at the expense of human dignity. As he pushed his cart toward the executive floor, his mind wandered to the hidden office on the 50th floor, Thomas's sanctuary. For 5 years it had remained untouched, protected by security protocols that even Sterling couldn't override. Tonight, Keanu would finally use the key that had hung heavy around his neck all these years. The executive floor was buzzing with activity. Through the glass walls, Keanu could see Sterling holding court in the main conference room, his face animated with cruel excitement as he pointed to various spreadsheets projected on the wall. The board members nodded along, their expressions ranging from enthusiastic to resigned. Sam's ears perked up suddenly, and Keanu followed his gaze to Eleanor's office. The HR director was quietly packing her personal items into a box, her movements mechanical, her eyes vacant. Sterling had made good on his threat then. 20 years of loyal service ended with a cardboard box and a severed security badge. That evening, long after the building had emptied, Keanu made his way to the 50th floor. Sam padded alongside him, alert and ready. The hidden office was behind. A false wall in the building's architectural plans, accessible only through a service corridor that official blueprints marked as electrical storage. The key slid into the lock with a soft click. Inside, the office was exactly as Thomas had left it, a time capsule of better days. Photos on the walls showed the company's early years, when employee satisfaction scores were among the highest in the industry, when Sterling Enterprises was known for its ethical practices and community involvement. Keanu moved to the desk, running his fingers along its polished surface. The computer hummed to life as he pressed the power button, the password as familiar as his own name. Empower Others 1989, the year Thomas had founded the company. Within minutes, he was accessing files that would make Sterling's blood run cold. Project files revealed the true extent of Sterling's corruption, evidence of systematic wage theft, falsified safety reports, illegal surveillance of union organizers. It was all there, meticulously documented by Thomas before his departure. But more importantly, there were contingency plans, carefully crafted protocols for exactly the situation Keanu now faced. Sam's low growl alerted him to movement in the corridor. Quickly saving the files to an encrypted drive, Keanu shut down the computer and slipped into the shadows. Through the crack in the door, he saw Marcus Chen, the company's young legal counsel, working late again. Something about the way Marcus carried himself, the slight stoop of his shoulders, the worried furrow of his brow, caught Keanu's attention. The next morning, as Keanu cleaned Marcus's office, he deliberately left Thomas's old business card on the desk, modified with a time and location written in barely visible UV ink. It was time to start building his team, and Marcus's reputation for questioning Sterling's more dubious legal maneuvers made him a prime candidate. The week progressed with an increasingly suffocating atmosphere. More boxes appeared, more whispered. Conversations ended abruptly when managers approached. Sarah's desk was empty one morning. She had been called to HR first thing. When she returned, her eyes were red, but her chin was held high. She had 2 weeks to find another job before her position would be eliminated. That evening, as Keanu prepared to leave, he found a folded note tucked into Sam's collar. Sarah must have slipped it there during their usual morning interaction. Inside was a USB drive and a hastily scrawled message. Found this in the printer tray. Thought. You should see it. Be careful, Mr. K. In his truck parked in the shadows of the garage, Keanu reviewed the contents of the drive. What he found made his blood run cold. Detailed plans for dismantling employee pension funds, funneling the money through shell companies, and leaving thousands of loyal workers with nothing for their retirement years. Sam whined softly, sensing his master's distress. Keanu scratched behind his ears, his mind racing with possibilities. The pieces were falling into place faster than he had anticipated. Marcus, Sarah, the pension documents. The universe was telling him it was time to act. As they drove home through the neon-lit streets of Dallas, Keanu began mentally preparing for the next phase of his plan. Tomorrow he would make contact with Marcus. The quiet revolution was about to become a little louder, and Sterling's carefully constructed house of cards would soon face its first real test. The weight of Thomas's legacy pressed against his chest, but for the first time in Sabinjin years it felt more like a source of strength than a burden. The game was changing, and Sterling was about to learn that the most dangerous player was the one he never bothered to notice. The meeting with Marcus Chen took place in an unremarkable coffee shop 10 blocks from Sterling Enterprises. Rain pattered against the windows, providing cover for their hushed conversation. Sam lay quietly under the table, his presence oddly reassuring in this moment of revelation. I always knew there was something different about you, Marcus said, studying Keanu's face with newfound understanding. The way you moved through the building, how you seemed to notice everything. No ordinary janitor pays such close attention to board meeting schedules and executive movements. Keanu placed Thomas's original business card on the table between them. Thomas Sterling was more than just my friend. He was a visionary who believed business could be both profitable and ethical. What his son has done to the company goes against everything he built. Marcus leaned forward, his voice barely above a whisper. The pension fund manipulation isn't the worst of it. I've been documenting irregularities for months, but I needed allies. Sterling has the board wrapped around his finger, and the few who question him suddenly find themselves facing personal scandals or financial ruin. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Sarah, her presence unexpected but not unwelcome. Her eyes were clear and determined as she slid into the booth beside Marcus. I hope you don't mind me joining, she said, placing a thick folder on the table. But I think you'll want to see what I found while clearing out my desk. The documents. She brought revealed a pattern of systematic harassment and retaliation against employees who spoke up about ethical concerns. Sterling had created an elaborate system to silence dissent, using a network of loyal middle managers to identify and eliminate potential whistleblowers. "How many others?" Keanu asked, his quiet voice carrying the weight of years of observation. "More than you'd think," Sarah replied. "Eleanor left me a key to her office before they escorted her out. She's been keeping records for years. Names, dates, witnesses, everything we'd need to prove a pattern of corporate abuse." Marcus studied the documents with growing excitement. "With this evidence and my legal expertise, we could build a case. But we'd need more than just papers. We'd need people willing to testify, to stand up against Sterling's intimidation tactics." Keanu shared a knowing look with Sam before reaching into his worn backpack. He withdrew his notebook, 5 years of detailed observations, conversations and incidents. But more importantly, he pulled out a sealed envelope bearing Thomas Sterling's personal seal. "What we need," Keanu said, breaking the seal, "is legitimacy, the authority to challenge Sterling's leadership directly." He spread the contents of the envelope across the table: stock certificates, legal documents, and a letter written in Thomas's distinctive hand. Sarah's eyes widened as she grasped the implications. "You're not just gathering evidence. You're planning to take control of the company." "Thomas left me controlling interest in Sterling Enterprises," Keanu confirmed. "But shares alone aren't enough. We need to prove Sterling's misconduct to force an emergency board meeting, and we need to do it before he can complete his plan to dismantle the pension funds." Marcus pulled out his laptop, his fingers flying across the keyboard. "Sterling's scheduled to present the pension fund restructuring to the board next week. If we're going to act, it has to be before then." Their planning session stretched into the evening, interrupted occasionally by Sam's gentle reminders that he needed a walk. As they coordinated their roles, more allies emerged. Eleanor, reached by secure phone, agreed to provide testimony. Several mid-level managers, contacted through Sarah's network, pledged their support. But Sterling wasn't idle. The next morning, security protocols throughout the building suddenly changed. New guards appeared at every entrance, checking IDs with unprecedented thoroughness. Cameras that had been dormant for years whirred to life, their lenses following employees' movements. Keanu maintained his routine, pushing his cart through newly restricted areas with the same quiet efficiency. But now, each movement was calculated, each pause choreographed. Sam's presence became even more crucial, his keen senses alert for approaching danger as Keanu collected the final pieces of evidence they needed. The tension reached a breaking point when Sterling called an unexpected all-hands meeting. Standing before the assembled employees, his expensive suit a stark contrast to their business casual attire, he spoke of loyalty and corporate family, while threatening dire consequences for those who violated confidentiality agreements. Keanu watched from the back of the room, his mop creating endless circles on the already clean floor. He caught Sarah's eye across the room, saw Marcus shifting uncomfortably in his seat, and knew their time was running out. Sterling's paranoia was growing, and with it, the risk to everyone involved in their plan. That evening, as the Dallas skyline blazed with sunset, Keanu made his final visit to Thomas's hidden office. The evidence was assembled, the witnesses were ready, and the legal documents were prepared. Tomorrow would change everything. As he closed the secret door for what might be the last time, Sam pressed against his leg, offering silent support. His truck, parked in the deepening shadows of the parking garage, Keanu reviewed their strategy one final time. The notification to board members would go out at midnight, calling for an emergency session. By dawn, Sterling's carefully constructed facade would begin to crumble. The quiet janitor who had watched and waited for 5 years was about to step out of the shadows, and nothing at Sterling Enterprises would ever be the same. The Sterling Enterprises boardroom crackled with tension on that fateful morning. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the shocked faces of board members as they processed the revelations before them. Robert Sterling III sat at the head of the table, his usual arrogant demeanor cracking under the weight of mounting evidence. "This is preposterous," Sterling sputtered, his manicured hands shaking as he shuffled through the documents. "How you expect us to believe that a janitor is the company's majority shareholder? This is clearly a coordinated attack on our corporate stability. Keanu stood quietly at the opposite end of the table, Sam sitting alertly by his side. Gone was the janitor's uniform, replaced by a simple but well-tailored suit. Yet he maintained the same calm demeanor that had served him so well during his years of observation. "The evidence speaks for itself," Marcus Chen declared, standing beside Keanu. "Mr. Reeves's ownership is documented and legally binding. The real issue before the board today is the systematic dismantling of this company's ethical foundation and the imminent threat to thousands of employees' pensions." Sarah and Eleanor sat among a group of witnesses, their presence adding weight to the massive file of documentation spread across the boardroom table. One by one, they testified to the culture of fear, the illegal practices, and the human cost of Sterling's leadership. "My father was a fool," Sterling sneered, attempting to regain control of the narrative. "He built this company on outdated principles. I transformed it into a modern, competitive enterprise. The shareholders are present," Keanu interrupted, his quiet voice somehow filling the room. "And they're about to see exactly how you've been manipulating their investments." With precise timing, Marcus projected a series of documents onto the boardroom screen. Financial records, email exchanges, and internal memos painted a damning picture of corporate malfeasance. Board members leaned forward, their expressions shifting from skepticism to concern to outrage. "This pension fund scheme alone," Marcus explained, highlighting key figures, "would have left over 3,000 employees without their retirement savings. The money would have been funneled through a network of shell companies, ultimately benefiting Mr. Sterling and a select group of executives." Sterling's face had turned an alarming shade of red. "You can't prove any of this. And even if you could, who would trust the word of a janitor over a Sterling? This company bears my name." "The company bears your father's name," Keanu corrected softly, finally pulling out Thomas's letter. "And he entrusted its legacy to me because he knew this day might come. He knew his son might choose profit over people, greed over growth, fear over innovation." As Keanu read Thomas's letter aloud, its words echoing through the stunned silence, Sterling made his final desperate move. He reached for his phone, presumably to call his personal security team, but Sam's low growl stopped him cold. The board's vote was unanimous. Sterling was removed from his position, pending a full investigation into his activities. As security escorted him from the building, employees gathered in the lobby broke into spontaneous applause. The news spread through all 50 floors like wildfire. The quiet janitor with the German Shepherd had been their silent guardian all along. In the weeks that followed, Sterling Enterprises underwent a transformation. Keanu, now officially installed as CEO, worked tirelessly to rebuild the company's ethical foundation. The pension funds were secured, employees were reinstated, and a new corporate culture began to emerge. Sarah was promoted to head of employee relations, her first act being the establishment of a comprehensive worker protection program. Marcus became chief legal counsel, his integrity and courage finally recognized. Eleanor returned as senior advisor, her experience invaluable in rebuilding trust among the workforce. 1 month after the boardroom confrontation, Keanu stood in Thomas's hidden office one last time. The space would be converted into a heritage center, preserving the story of Sterling Enterprises' founding principles and its return to ethical leadership. Sam sat beside him, gray around the muzzle but still alert and loyal. "We did it, old friend," Keanu murmured, scratching Sam's ears. "We restored Thomas's legacy." The Dallas sunrise painted the sky in brilliant hues, a new day dawning for Sterling Enterprises. In the lobby below, employees arrived for work without fear, their futures secure, their dignity restored. The quiet revolution had succeeded not through force or confrontation, but through patience, observation, and the unwavering belief that one person could make a difference. As Keanu prepared for his first official board meeting as CEO, he kept his old janitor's keys on his desk, a reminder that true leadership isn't about titles or corner offices, but about seeing, understanding, and serving others. The sight of his cleaning cart, now displayed prominently in the company museum, brought smiles rather than dismissal. It stood as a symbol that integrity and justice could prevail, even in the most unlikely ways.